We have Q&A, so questions and answers, or questions and answers, however way we want to do this. While you're thinking about your questions, I'm going to ask one one thing that has keeps on coming up, which is the young people. There's nothing more cyclical than the intergenerational kind of wonder around youth. And when it comes to music and sounds, young people are considered loud. They have different musical tastes. Nowadays, they're on TikTok sharing these clips and all this. And it's kind of, we've all been young and we've all been kind of accused of being this. Yeah, any reflections in terms of your stances or what you have presented today, the perspectives on this intergenerational sharing sound and song, and how we also get to how young people also get to design what the soundscapes and songs that are here in our public spaces that we share are. Lene.
Well, um, actually, I realized that when we think too much about it, it becomes a little bit awkward sometimes. We realize that if we, uh, one example is to not talk about the young people, but actually invite them in. So we've been doing some. We have a few like young panels, and we're trying to continuously hear their minds and talk to them, but we also kind of give the curation of the program back to a different kind of groups of young people to see what they book. And the thing is that when it comes to mind, they kind of book the same things, or at least some of the same ones. They do have, and that's what I love about it, some a little bit more braveness in just looking for other possibilities. Example, not going too much care about genres and stuff, and I love that. So we have some nice conversations, but one of the things that I find is not a new thing, but a thing that is still very common, is that when we book something that is really important, we have a very broad generation span at Vega, and it goes from 12 to 60 for a concert that I thought was quite like youngish. So I think it's all about embracing it in different levels. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah. You're welcome.
Nicholas.
If you want. Yeah.
Hmm. I think the first thing that comes to mind is also kind of how we make things accessible and what is visible nowadays. I'm thinking like I was recently in Brazil visiting the city that I grew up, and it looks very different in just in like 20 years time. Before we would see like groups rehearsing on the street and like capoeira circles on the street, and now it's just so many cars everywhere. So what are the spaces that we created that can allow these things to happen? And I remember on the Foresight cycle, someone, I don't remember who was, but was reflecting about how I think it was his cousin or someone in Norway was growing up in Norway, but with a very like U.S. Centered culture because of all the social media. And I think that's also interesting of like how those kind of let's say mainstream or bigger social media actually teach some kind of culture nowadays, and how does that
Mm.
play a role also in local or different other cultures. And yeah.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I think you also should invite them into the city planning and also find spaces for them. I mean, I think Martin and I talked about earlier there were like smoking squares, but now it could be actually sound squares in the city that you could actually have like an auxiliary, like a 3.1 cable, and just plug in and have like the sound environment. You can own the sound environment for that space, for example. I think that would be a great opportunity to engage more young people to also feel that they are heard and can be loud, because that is part of youth, right? I mean, it's becomes pretty easy video violence discussions, and we were kids. Like it's scary with this loud generation, but it's. I think we need more spaces like that there where they can actually play music loud in the city.
Mm. and be part of creating that.
Exactly.
A couple of years ago in Helsinki, there's a shopping mall, bus station, metro station kind of hub in the city center, and there was a great idea of a lot of young people gathering there. The weather is cruel, so you need to gather inside and a meeting point in many ways. So the shopping mall, they decided to start playing really loud classical music because they realized that young people do not like classical music. So to
Exactly.
get rid of them,
Yeah.
that was kind of the opposite
Yeah.
of what to do.
Yeah.
Definitely. Opening up for questions. We have a microphone here. Martin will be delivering it. Please just present yourself briefly and ask your question, and and tell us if you're addressing the question on someone in particular or for everyone.
Hello, thank you so much for the presentations. My name is Matilda and I'm a student at Malmö University. I would like to ask Nicholas a question regarding the capoeira, because you talk about the music and the movement, but I'm curious about like the voice or the lyrics. Has that ever been, or is it also a part of capoeira with lyrics?
Yeah. So there is that's kind of a very complex also topic. But on one hand, like we say, that the lyrics also guide the game that happens. But on the other hand, capoeira comes from an oral history tradition, right? And the capoeira history was not recorded. So the way that we keep it forward is through the songs. I had once, I was teaching and I had one of the people training with me, she asked, oh, I don't feel comfortable. We're singing a song that talks about an enslaved woman that was like fighting for freedom. And her name was Aide. And there is this song that just repeats her name, Ai, Ai, Aide. And she was like, I don't feel comfortable as a white woman repeating the name of this black enslaved woman. Why should I do that? And the point there was like, you open any history book in Brazil, you're not going to hear about Aide. You're not going to hear about a lot of these fighters. And the reason why we still remember them like 400 years after is because we've been singing those songs. So if you are from like a more position of power as like a white person, then you should have more responsibility to actually repeat that name louder and louder, right? So that we don't forget it. So that like the role of the songs and the lyrics there is also to keep the history alive.
Okay.
I also have a question to Nicholas. I'm Håkan Jonsson. I'm a landscape architect. I was really I appreciate your lecture very much, especially about the capoeira as well. You talked about it was legalized in the 60s, and it's have been there for 400 years as a resistant movement in some way. I think that is so complex. So what happened to capoeira when it was popularized, as you also described? Was it losing the substance? And also, I think I will always meet, if you, for example, perform music yourself, can you, as a white person, perform strange fruits, for example?
Yeah.
Where is your boundaries for that kind of thing? How do you feel about the popularization of capoeira? Is it still dangerous for someone in power?
Well, to add one more like very messy thing there, it was legalized by the dictatorship in Brazil in the 60s. Yeah, there was actually like one other like capoeira master, as we call it, that created a new style, uh, including a lot of like, especially like French savate and other martial arts, and created a capoeira with another name, and that was legalized. And then, you know, it became like the old style capoeira that we saw on the video. Also took the initiative to say like, okay, if this is capoeira now, we actually have the traditional one, and we have to strengthen it. And it's now UNESCO cultural heritage, like immaterial heritage. I am just learning it, you know, and I think this thing of like with thresholds and legitimacy, I have my capoeira master in Brazil, who is like 83 years old. And if he tells me that I am a person that can teach, I am going to obey him and do it. So I think it varies a lot on like following the lineages and what people allow you to do or not. Kind of, it's difficult to say one can do this, one can do that, because in capoeira, where like I think a lot with like oral histories, you may hear one thing here and you may hear the opposite there, and there's not right and wrong. They're just truths for in different ways, and it depends on which direction you go. Kind of. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here in the front.
I'm Yuna Vradi. I'm a business developer. And first, thank you all for your inspiring talk, because now I really feel optimistic about the future of music and sounds, because previously I feel like it's a little bit stuck and goes on the spiral. But now I see some perspective here. So thank you all. And thank you, Lene, Viva, for your amazing Vega plays. I really love it. I appreciate all your efforts. And thank you for spread diversity in music industry. It's really important.
Thanks.
My questions to Martin, actually, it's two questions. First, which key metrics you use by creating this soundscape? Is it like branded metrics, like how it's brand the place, or it's mental health condition of people who belong this place, or it's like to make people feel together? So what is your goal by creating these soundscapes?
A really good question. It totally depends on the space that we're working with. If it's places like this, I mean, it's open air, it's on the streets and in parks and things like that. There's no brands involved in that kind of process. It's a totally different scope. But when it comes to brands, we are also working with these type of environments as well. But for example, we can have we worked with a big playground in Helsingborg, for example, where we did a 16-channel soundscape for that playground. So we are mimicking all the sound sources in a forest, for example, or in the jungle, because it was a jungle theme. And then we can play like some monkeys high up in speakers high up in the trees, and then we have some lion cubs in one speaker there, and then we can create different kind of sound scenes in this playground that can actually go around. The animals can go around in this environment. And at the same time, we also do noise barriers between the playground and roads going up to the ferry from Helsingborg to Helsingør. So we are taking care of this sound environment and make the people in the playground focus on the sounds in the playground instead of listening to the pretty noisy environment around. So that is like, I think it both have some health aspects, but it's something that actually make this possible to place a playground in pretty much of an industry area with using the soundscape as a thing that is making it possible. So, but there's a lot of things to say about that. I don't know if it was an answer to the question, but
Actually, I was there. It was in June during the Helsingborg Expo.
exactly.
Yeah, my kids enjoying it a lot.
Okay, fun. Yeah, nice.
So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And the next questions, it's more about technologies.
Yep.
Do you use any AI technologies? Because one of your colleagues, Endel application, what also create soundscapes.
Yep.
They use AI a lot to harmonize all these sounds and
Yes.
create some design to add music design, and AI helps them to adapt that all. So how you use new technologies for creating these soundscapes?
That's a really interesting question as well. We are just in the beginning of that. We don't use it so much today, but we are constantly looking at that field and also about oralization of the environment to create different kinds of immersive experiences that you can actually feel what type of sound it would be in that particular place with headphones and glasses. I'm sure that AI will do a lot of things here, but it's too early to say today, and we are not working with it so much today, but will in the future, I promise. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question over here.
Hello, Lars Meding. Well, I worked here a couple of years ago, but I also been a musician. And my question is for you, Martin. It's once I saw a professor from Konstfack, the art academy in Stockholm, and he had made an animation about the perception hierarchy. And he forgot sound. Okay, it was movement, it was contrast, and it went through. He forgot sounds. It's quite interesting. And in your field, you must have come very often reflect over this unawareness. And you all got those microwaves that beep, 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 and all such things. How come is this unawareness?
Thank you. A really, really interesting question. I think there's a lot of answers on that. One of it is actually, I think, the city environment that we are in. We have stopped to listen. We're constantly affected, but we have stopped to listen to it because there's no information for us. I mean, speaking about the beeping sounds in kitchens, I mean, it's a risk with sounds that actually is like intrusive in that way, and it also underestimate the user's intelligence in some ways. I mean, we all know that if I put something on the stove that I took out from the oven, we know that we won't cook in that on the induction hub, but the induction hub wants to tell us that it's wrong to do that, or a dishwasher that beeps in the night telling me that I need to run down or empty the dishwasher and things like that. It's just an unawareness, as you say, and they haven't thought about it. That is actually designed there as well. To add, you can add quality to your home by designing these small UI sounds and create a much better soundscape at home. But it's more and more companies that are developing products are thinking that way. And when it comes to the professor, I don't know specific his intention of that, but it's also that I think it's 10 to 1 or something, the impressions we get from sight and from hearing. So we are much more used to analyze what we are seeing. But that is also an advantage for us working with sound, because people don't think so much about sound. So we can add sound and you can get a total different feeling of something, but you don't think about the sound. So it's also a nice thing for us to work with, but it's super interesting subject.
Thank you. I think we had a question here in the front, and then we move here.
Hello, I'm Jon. I work here at Media Evolution, and I was in the collaborative forces cycle with Nicholas. But I have a question that maybe regards spaces and the sounds they make, and especially like what sounds can take place in a city. So we're coming up with spring summer season, which also means in Malmö, roaring engines up and down Amiralsgatan, Bellvägen, Bergsgatan. We also mean seagull season.
Exactly, yes.
So all of these are sort of natural sounds to a city, and we could even argue that seagulls is nature, and nature equals good, but seagulls not as good nature. Uh, um, and at the same time, also those revving engines are an expression of a culture, like and has always been since the raggare back in the '60s, and coming from Värmland, where I'm from, like there's still cities where the raggarna is roaring up and down, blasting music all summer long. So, what are your takes, just generally, on like cultural expression versus sound pollution, and how can we make space for all of them?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Lena, do you wanna? How is it for Vega?
To work with
With
soundscapes, or can you elaborate a little bit?
More like maybe, I mean, like you are probably also opposed to subcultures
Mhm.
musical
Mhm.
expressions that doesn't fit anywhere else.
Mhm.
I guess you paper
Mhm.
was what someone else would call noise,
Mhm.
but what other would regards as music. Like,
Yeah, and we do think in soundscapes sometimes to actually trying to bring your mind into what's going on. And we've been thinking about how the introduction of something and how the outro is being. So we do think about how to, put your mind into what's going on. On regards to like different kind of genres and stuff, I think that the audience are, way over like knowledge than we are, because they know what they're going into. Maybe they don't know the band itself because they're very um, curious, but they do know how to like switch their brain to now something crazy is happening. But some of it is also about the narrative. How do you talk about this? How do you encourage people to indulge in this specific sound? And how do you encourage them to maybe like try to avoid other sounds? So I think it's about how you how you speak about it, and maybe you know something about that too. Like it's all about how you, when you go into the streets today, do you wear your headphones or do you actually decide to listen to the the noises of the city, and something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I can answer quick on that. I mean, exactly that, and I think it's also interesting because you would never, never, but it's more seldom that you use headphones on the countryside, for example. Then it's easy to then you want to hear a car coming on the gravel or things. Things mean something when it comes to sound, but there's so much sound going on in the city, so you don't maybe do that. But back to the question, I think it's a really interesting subject, and exactly that I think is the social responsibility for people like us working with sound, to get that friction, because it's friction between maybe the raggare and the people living next side to the road, to make everyone, I mean, have the, at least try to get the opportunity to make everyone get their space in the city. And when it's raggare, maybe it's like just some evenings that it's okay for the raggare to come there, and I mean to find different ways of doing that. But it's a really interesting question, and exactly that type of question we think it's important to just not just abandon, like stop things, that but instead try to find the perfect balance between the different interests in the city when it comes to sound. So there's we can talk more about that.
Lene, did you want to add?
Yeah, because I just realized the perspective of that. I have a son with the ADHD and autism, and I realized that sound for him can be two completely opposite things. So when the beep from the washing machine and the stove and goes on, he's immediately distracted from what you were doing, and it's the smallest sound, and he can hear it, and he's distracted, and we are off the topic. But sometimes I put on a lot of different sounds, and I give him headphones on, and sometimes it's silent, and sometimes it's full of noises, because it's like if there are a lot of noises, he can focus in a weird way. So I think that's something like people with disabilities, people that are trying to cope with all the things that's going on, noises, cars, all that stuff. Maybe we can add a perspective so they can go through life a little bit easier. Yeah, I went to an exhibition with my son at in Copenhagen, and there was this exhibition that me and my husband, we actually wanted to leave that room because the noise was crazy, and it was a flickering screen and noises all the way, and that was kind of the art process. And my son just laid down on the carpet floor and just embraced it, and it was like he was taking a nap. And we were like, oh, I need to get out of here. So I figured that sometimes I think that's why some people are listening to heavy metal a lot when they work. Like I cannot do that, but I have a colleague and he's like, doo, doo, doo. I think it's a way that you perceive sound, and it's very, very individual how you concept it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nicholas, did you want to?
Yeah, what came to my mind now is like, I think nowadays with like the phone and YouTube and Spotify, we are very much into like curating what we want and being angry about having what we don't want, like seagulls or raggare. I don't like also the roaring cars, and I live by no, vegan, and I have a baby, so it's like it's difficult. But also in a way, like put the raggare in a fake street somewhere else, and it kind of loses maybe the meaning for the people. It's like putting graffiti in a what is it called, like a Konsthal, so how can we create how can we allow for these different things to coexist uh, respectfully? I think that's maybe a word, like with care and respect. Like I live in a noisy place and with a small baby, and there is a lot of like noise from the street, and it's not nice. But on the other hand, like, okay, it's nice that people are on the street, so yeah, it's tricky. Like how do we allow these things to coexist respectfully without saying, if you want to do graffiti, there is a legal wall here for you,
Yeah. Our shared space. We had a question here.
Yes, I will try to connect what you actually just talked about, and I would address the question to the three of you of giving one really good example of where sound is not just a pop-up thing, 1, 2, 3 days things at a playground, more a longer thing happening in a city where it helps the kids with disability or all people with NPFs, not call it a disability, but yeah, but situations or places or where it's not just a pop-up, more a long-term thing in a city. And why I ask this is because I've toured, I worked with musicians, I worked at the Olympics, been to Brazil several times, where it's just a nice feeling. And with the Eurovision, I can feel right now a lot of fear. But in those situations I've been around, music and songs and sounds can help reduce fear. Like Kololum, I don't know when you sing in Hebrew and English and Arabic. If you have each a good example of from your experience where it actually works, not just a pop-up of a longer thing, and what is needed to be done in cities to actually get that situation to happen. Good examples, what needs to be done to make it happen.
Wow. Question.
No pressure.
Exactly. Nicholas.
Well, I think the cultural sound zone in Malmo is a nice example. The Norra Grängesbergsgatan area. And that's, I mean, we could say it's nice, but we could also say it's kind of segregation to put all the music studios there and everything. That's where we also have capoeira practices usually. But it's a place where noise, music, whatever you are trying to do, whatever you want to call it, exists, and it's allowed to exist. To think back of Brazil, I've heard once like a musician from Latin America saying like, "Oh, I came to Sweden, and here everything is allowed and we can't do anything, and in our country everything is forbidden and we do everything." And that was the case also with the city that I grew up. There was this, there was still there like this big garden by the sea, and you were forbidden to skateboard there. You were forbidden to play music. You were like you couldn't do anything, but everything was happening there. So that everything kind of coexisted. So we were like skateboarding here, and there was a capoeira circle there, and then there was like Hare Krishna singing, like literally. I've been through this scenario, like Hare Krishna music, capoeira music, skateboarding, everything going on at the same time, and everything was not allowed to be there.
Thank you.
I don't know how to create that.
Yeah, I was. I think some of all of this is that there's not one song that will unite us all. There's not one like, way of sound because we are very individual in a way. So, but I think that some things that we need to be serious about is to take control over the sound, and that's what you maybe trying to do a little bit. Just not this everything flow, but kind of curate it, and on the same time, in this curation, try to be a little free, because if you find a nice song but you keep repeating it in that restaurant all day, like everyone would be like, it's like terror. Even if it's a nice song. So it's all about finding like volume, acoustics, a nice place. There's so many things that needs to be curated in a way to find it the right feeling and to make it a nice place to be. I like classical music, I love it, but I experience the same things that you talked about, that it's been used as a, get away from here. They use it at the train station in Copenhagen to keep heroin addicts away. So it's not really very nice to hear Mozart there. But another example I wanted to come up with, maybe a little, contradictive, is actually silence. Put it in the right way. So if you have places for a comfortable silence, the minutes before an act goes on, maybe when you enter a building, it's a little bit nice. There's not going on. So there's so many different things where you can work with silence to kind of coexist.
Right.
So that was just a little add-on.
Thank you.
Ah, yeah, I totally understand.
It's that
And it's the volume. It's the volume that is, yeah.
repetition. Okay. Thank you. But they
Yeah.
choose classical music for. Martin, any reflections on?
Yeah, I have so many, but start to say that the Helsingborg playground is not a pop-up. It's still there. It's will be played, so you can go there and experience it. But I mean, the question. I mean, I think it's two things. One is like sound quality in the city. The other is like the cultural thing of allowing people to come together over music in different ways and creating the platform for that and the areas, and also allowing volume for it, like the sound zone in Malmö. And also, I mean, that is two aspects of it. I totally agree on the silence. We have made a guide to the silence in Stockholm, for example, where we have 20 places in Stockholm where the decibel is so low that it's experienced like silence, because it's quite hard to find those places nowadays in the city. But also when you talk about, I mean, creating calm places with sound, one thing that comes to mind is in Sadar, there is this water organ. I don't know if anyone has experienced it. It's a fantastic soothing experience to sit by that sound. And I think, I mean, thinking about these type of areas, and also think about how can we, through maybe mechanical things, create something that actually affects the sound environment and also affects the tempo of the environment, and make people maybe come down in pace in that way, is also a way of doing it. But it's complex, and it's also a lot of different type of skills and type of people needs to sit at the same table and discuss these things. So it's not like decisions are made too fast or without taking account all the different aspects of it. So it's complicated, but there's a lot of possibilities, I think, in the area.
We are getting into the weekend. Is there any sound that you're looking forward to this weekend?
What do I want to listen to? Oh, I just got an album with a Norwegian guy called Otto Totland. And I got it when we did the Nils Fram residency, because he was playing. And oh, that's just a weekend sound of calming down, listening to nice piano-ish spheric music. I think that's what I'm gonna do on the train back home.
Wonderful. Enjoy.
I go on the totally different level. I like that as well, but I would like to go down in my basement and play techno in 140 BPM. That is like my Friday evening.
Wonderful.
Yep.
We'll hear you.
Yep.
Super. Nicholas.
I don't know actually. Maybe what came to my mind is I have a party to go with some friends that I haven't seen in quite a long time. So just that mumbling of people talking, it's gonna be nice. Housewarming party.
Oh, that sounds great.
Wonderful. Enjoy. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming and sharing. And thank you all for listening.
Thank
We
you.
will